Hey everybody, this is Jason from Cash on Hand Studios, and today we're going to be making a ring for CatherineR using a 1980 US quarter with the date inside and a mirror dome finish outside. Basically, that means we're going to be filing the outside off and polishing it to a mirror finish. There is the 1980 quarter, nicely not in focus. The tail side won't be any better in focus, but that coin is about extra fine, almost uncirculated. So there's a 3D printed little jig that I made to make sure that my holes are always circular and center punched perfectly. Put it in the punch and die set in the 6-ton press, pop the center out, and then follow that pin through with a smaller pin. Those fall through, put them back on their little magnets, pull the coin out, and there it is with the perfectly centered hole punched right out of it. That is a deburring tool. It's meant to take sharp edges off the inside of cut pipes, or in this case, cut rings. It keeps us from tearing the coins as we make them in the rings. If you start stretching them and there's a tear, they're just going to keep on tearing and you will lose the coin. Now when I do silver coins, what I'm doing here is picking up all the shavings you can see there. If this was a silver coin, I'd keep those, but since it's not, I just throw them away. We are annealing the coin here. It means heating it up until it's around a dull red, dripping it in water, cooling it off real quick, putting it in this doming block. The doming block has semicircles cut out of it in all sorts of different sizes. There's one that's the perfect size for a quarter there. Put a little bit of paper towel on top of it, and then use my doming pin. It's basically a steel rod with a ball bearing welded onto the end of it. Helps me get a nice little dome on it. And you can see me pressing it down into the dome just until it gets to the bottom, and then we get this nice bent domed shape here. We're about halfway done making the shape of the ring, at least. Now we need to clean out the inside of that cut edge so that it's nice and smooth. We make sure we don't have any tears. Since it's not a silver coin, I'm putting no shavings in the trash. Then we re-anneal the coin. We're going to do this a few times just to soften it up so that we can get a more malleable metal. Makes it so it doesn't tear, makes it so it stretches out easier. Fold up paper towel into 4 layers, put it on the ring stretching mandrel, pull it down, and then slowly turn it as we stretch it. The paper usually tears out there at the beginning just because it pinches it off. Re-anneal the coin one more time, dip it in the water, cool it off. Now I'm going to sand out the inside real good just to make sure that we got all those little imperfections gone. Another piece of paper towel, 4 layers thick, poke a hole in it so that it'll slide down, push it down the ring mandrel, crank, 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 make sure there's no tears coming, put it back on, crank, crank, crank. Another check on it, make sure there's no little rips or tears, checking the size to see how close we are, and we are actually getting pretty close. One more time on the mandrel, pop a hole in the paper, slide it down, stretch it out. You can start to feel it getting a little bit tougher to work with here, so we know that we're going to have to re-anneal soon. But not quite yet, apparently. I got another one left in there. Just wanted to get right up to the right size. Where are we at? Apparently we're there. Alright, so I take the punch and die set, take the acrylic face off so that I can use that as a press plate there. Put the coin with the cut side down. You can see it's still a little domed. So I take that cut side, or the reeded side down so that we can pinch that in. I'll readjust that magnifying glass for you in a minute. I'm basically just centering it up here, pushing that all the way down into the bottom of the block to make sure that it centers up, and then putting that as a press plate on it down to dome out that side, flip it over, and I realize that it is not quite so we're going to put it on the steel ring mandrel with a little bit of paper towel in there so we don't mess up the details on the inside, because that's what we're going for, and then take this mallet and basically beat the ring into submission. This one wanted to get a little lopsided, but I caught it pretty early, so we kind of reshape it until it's pretty much in a nice little circle again. Check it to make sure we're round, and we are. So we're going back, the doming block, put the press plate on top, Finish pressing that other side to dome in both sides, so it should be nice and even. There you go, nice straight walls on it with a little bit of a dome at the bottom. That makes both sides about the same size. Now this isn't the final size that we're going for, it just gets the shape right. So we re-anneal the coin, because I don't want to be tearing these things, especially when we're this close to getting it in the right shape and size. More paper towel to protect the inside. On the ring mandrel, push her down, stretch her out. I flip it over just so that I'm evening both sides out as I stretch it, and we're not getting one side stretching more than the other. And that way I'm also keeping the size about the same on both sides. So it was a little bit over, so we're back into the press there. I put my fingernail between the press plate and the doming block so that I can feel just how much it's moving. I really only had to take off like a quarter of size here, so I really needed to be careful and not take too much off. Didn't take quite enough off, so back in, and apparently I thought I had a little further to go than I actually did. I took it down just a little too far. So we checked the size and it's a little small, but that's fine. We'd actually rather go that way. Back on the mandrel with some paper towel. Stretch it, stretch it, stretch it, stretch it, check the size. Now we're really close here, really close. So what I'm going to do is actually take the deburring tool and clean out the reeded edge a little bit because that's a little thicker. This way we can get both sides closer to the same. Looks like I need to take a little more off. So go back in there, try and keep it really fine and smooth. Check the size, really, really close. So we're just gonna put it back on the ring mandrel at this point. Just a tiny little touch here. I'm trying not to overdo it. That's why I'm just pushing with my thumb at the end. Still really, really close. One more time on the mandrel, just a touch. And then I think we're there. So now I take my drill and I put it in a bench vise. I have a bolt that I put a small washer, a tapered rubber cork, and another washer on with a nut. Put that into the drill, and that little tool that I just put together there costs $50 online, or you can get it in trade for rings from Bob at your local hardware store. Bob at Alpine Lumber, thank you very much for saving me $50 on this. I'd be glad to make you another ring whenever you're interested. So right now I'm trying to get this guy centered up on that mandrel so that as it spins, it's spinning nice and centered, and I can grind the outside of this ring all the way down. And yes, Mom, I wear goggles when I do cool stuff. I take a file, turn this on, and then I put my hands directly in front of the camera. You're welcome. I'm putting a 45-degree angle on the top here right now, just to get a nice little start on getting that reeded edge off so that we can get a nice flat surface to work with. I thought you might just like the sound of what's not actually a dentist drill. So I go ahead and check how far we've gone on this. You can see that most of the details come off of the coin already, but we keep spinning it on the drill and laying these files down onto it until it smooths out, or until my fingers start to burn from the friction heating up the file, and at this point I have to either stop or switch files. I also need a napkin to pull it off and check it. Dip it in some water to cool it off, wipe it off, put it back on. And again, it's really important to keep this thing even while I'm spinning it, especially when I'm trying to take material off the outside. If it's lopsided, you're not going to get the details off on one side, and you're going to rub it completely through on the other side, and that's not going to do you any good on this. So that's why I take my time doing all these little adjustments to make sure that we're nice and level. Get the cork nice and centered, and then we're off to using the file again. Yes, I could really use a drill press. I realize that. Or a lathe. Alright, so back to filing it down. I'm trying to get the reeded edge off, trying to smooth it out. Not really taking the whole reeded edge off. I still want you to be able to tell that this thing's a quarter. it all depends on how well that edge comes out, on how much I have to take off, because these aren't brand new quarters, so I try to make sure there's no chips on it. So once we get it kind of leveled out, you see there's still a couple of black rings going around that, right around the middle of the coin. So we just kind of lay into it with that heavy file again. Cool it off. And we're going to do some detail work here. So it looks like there's not going to be a whole lot of progress made on these little black marks that are really deep down in there. Just, I don't know if it was just a touch off center or I don't know what it was, but there was just a couple of little black marks that I really couldn't get to file off on there without damaging the actual shape of the coin. So I just went in there and hand filed them down real nice, and the more time you take with it, the better it looks in the end. So this stage is actually pretty important, obviously, if you want a nice finish on it without any black marks. So we keep filing it down and filing it down until I don't see any more black marks. There we go. So now that we've got that done, we put it back in the vise, level it out, crank it back up. Again, a $50 tool, and this probably would have leveled itself, but you know what? For even trade on a coin ring, I'll take that. So this is some 320 grit sandpaper on a sanding block, and I just kind of lay into the side there to try and get those edges nice and rounded out and everything in one nice round direction. Then we switch to the 1500 grit. This is actually labeled as mirror grit sandpaper. So I wet it down a little bit, and we get going on wet sanding at 1500 grit. With 1500 grit, I can actually have the drill going pretty quick, and it polishes up real nice. You can actually see the sheen come as you draw the sandpaper across it the first time. Then you just come in and do the rest of the detail work, cool it down so you can manage to touch it, because it does get a little bit warm with all this sanding. Level it back out one more time. If it seems like it takes longer to finish the coin ring than it actually takes to turn it into a ring, you're right. But that's where all the details come on these. Now, if you're going to leave all the detail on the outside of the coin, it goes a whole lot faster. I take one of these little sanding discs from my Dremel, cut a half circle out of it at the top, and fill it in with some of this polishing compound that comes with the Dremel polishing kit. And then I put that little polishing wheel into my vise, clamp it in, and then off we go to polishing that ring on there. Depending on the ring and depending on the finish, it takes 20 seconds to a minute, depending on how much polishing you really need to get done. But me trying to get a nice mirror polish on this, I'm putting some time into running that thing on the polishing. There we go. Wipe it off, and there you go. We got a nice shiny band. Now we're going to put it in the cleaning solution. I did skip a step accidentally, so I'll get back to it in a second here, but it's not that big a deal. You can do this whenever. So we take the brush and then just kind of brush all the outside to make sure we're cleaning it, and you get all the little marks off. Now here's what I had skipped. I take some super ultra fine quadruple zero steel wool and clean out the inside of the ring. That's what brings out the details and leaves that nice dark background on the inside for you to read the date against. So back in the cleaning solution one more time, just so that we can get all that muck off of there. Take the brush, clean out the inside. and clean out the reeded edge. And then wash it off, or rinse it off rather. Dry it with my lint-free towel. And then we're going to go grab some polishing cloths. The whites for wiping, the pinks for polishing, even though they're both kind of gray at this point. So we've wiped down, polish it down. This is the final step in this guy. And there is your final ring, Catherine. Again, that ring is for CatherineR out there on the East Coast in Norfolk, Virginia. This ring will be coming out to you from Colorado. And as always, you're awesome.